The tarmac shimmered in the desert heat, its wide apron dusted with wind-blown grit and marked with faded rotor circles from decades of landings. Turbine engines hissed in the background, and the hot gusts of downwash whipped through rows of flight suits and morale patches. Most of the new arrivals moved in confident clusters, laughing too loudly, slapping gear onto carts, and adjusting their helmet straps like badges of belonging. One of them called out a greeting to a group by the hangar, and a fresh chorus of inside jokes followed. Jenna walked past all of it without a word. She carried no duffel, just a slate-gray pack with one strapped-down helmet and a side pouch pressed shut with a single steel snap. Her boots were dust-worn but polished. Her flight suit was clean and regulation. There were no squadron patches, no nickname tags, no reflective tape to catch the sun. She looked like a ghost of the program, too plain to be noticed, too still to invite contact. When she passed the fuel truck, a voice cracked across the ramp. "Hey, you logistics." The man leaned against a dolly full of flares and tower kits, arms crossed. His name, Devon, was already loud enough to carry into the crew line beyond. Dispatch is probably looking for their clipboard. A few heads turned. Laughter followed, light at first, then sharper, and Jenna stopped near the loadmaster station. No one spoke to her directly again until her name was called at check-in mispronounced, slotted under the support staff column. No one corrected it. The officer scanning the roster just glanced at her chest, saw no badge, and moved on. Devon sidled closer. "You're in the wrong lane." "Ma'am," he said, voice syrupy. "Support crew's over there." He pointed to a shaded bench by the maintenance van. "Unless you're here for the family tour." Jenna didn't answer. She shifted her pack higher on her shoulder, her fingers brushing the edge of an old, cracked logbook tucked tight inside. She didn't open it. She never did unless the moment called for it. This wasn't one of those moments. From the tower window above, someone was watching. The instructors weren't invisible, just uninterested. A clipboard shifted. A pair of binoculars lowered. No voice called out to stop the mockery. The rest of the flight line burst into motion. Choppers roared to life for the afternoon sim jump, and Jenna stood alone beside a parked UH-60 with faded paint and sunburned windows. A nearby crew tossed her a folded map and said, "Be useful. Mark fuel points." She took it without protest and walked to the shadow of the old bird, where the wind kicked dust into her boots and pulled at her braid. Her fingers traced the edge of the fuselage. She didn't need to speak. She was watching. Devon's group mounted into a new model, blades humming overhead, helmets cocked at stylish angles. One of them pulled down his visor and shouted something that didn't carry, but the laughter did. On the base's digital login display, Jenna's name blinked once under authorized ground support. The next screen cycled to show the roster for that day's rotation. Hers wasn't there. No one noticed that she was still at the edge of the staging field when the others lifted off. No one saw her scan their takeoff vectors. No one cared when she walked back to the hangar as if nothing had happened. But someone from the tower did write something down. Inside the shaded hall of the flight bay, Jenna walked past a poster of past cohorts' smiling groups posed in front of Blackhawks, fire gear, goggles pushed up in camaraderie. She stopped just a second too long. Someone behind her laughed. "Yeah, that one's out of reach." She said nothing, just tapped her logbook shut. By evening, the airfield was golden with the flat light of a sun too stubborn to set. Instructors filed through for their final debrief. Most cadets swapped gear for mess trays and filled the halls with noise. Jenna found an unclaimed corner in the hangar, unfolded a map on a crate, and wrote a single note at the top of a faded fuel sheet. No one spoke to her that night, but one flight instructor crossed her name off the support list and wrote it again. This time, under pending. The next morning brought the first joint simulation. It was a 3-chopper exfil drill with time pressure, downwind pickup, and degraded comms as the baseline. Most cadets had already split into social flight groups. Jenna wasn't invited to any of them. She found her name on a side roster, logged under support map prep, fuel logs, comm tower monitoring. Her new desk sat just inside the logistics bay, across from the sim terminal. No headset, no flight tag, She wore her gloves anyway. When the final lift plan was submitted, Jenna caught a discrepancy. The mid-leg UH-60 was showing a mismatch between its outbound weight and predicted fuel consumption under the assigned route. The software hadn't flagged it. She had run the numbers by hand. She approached Devon, who was posting into the sim control as lead pilot. "There's a delta in the reserve burn," she said, quiet and clear. "If it's humid on that western ridge, they'll be short by 15%. Devon didn't look up from his wrist checklist. "Thanks. Clipboard," he said. "We've got it. Let the pilots handle the sky." Behind him, 2 others snorted. Jenna nodded once and stepped back to the terminal bay. She wrote it down. Time, fuel vector, projected failure point. She filed the note into the back of Callie's logbook and clipped it closed. The sim began. Terrain screens lit up with flood overlays. The choppers took off, animated in real time against high-altitude wind currents. One by one, the first and third birds cleared the ridge. The second bird hesitated. Its weight ran too hot. Warnings blinked red on the tower feed. Then it dropped out of view. Emergency landing required. Scenario failed. Within minutes, the instructors posted the report. 1 dead bird, 5 crew lost. Training canceled for review. Devon came out first. He was already laughing. Comms didn't help. He announced, "We were getting weird numbers. Probably someone feeding garbage into the update stack." Heads turned toward Jenna, who hadn't moved. Devon smirked. "Next time we ask for field support, remind me to use crayons." In the sim room's mirrored glass, his reflection stretched across the screen like a halo. He turned back to the crew. No one corrected him. No instructor spoke. Jenna wrote nothing. She sat still. Then she stood, walked to the empty mission board, and erased the error tag without a word. The cafeteria was louder than usual that night. The flood sim was over, and the only thing louder than the flight rotors outside was the retelling of Devon's Sky Wizard crash. Trainees sat 5 to a table, trays cluttered with wrappers and half-eaten rehydration packs. Someone threw a protein bar like a football and missed the table entirely. Jenna sat near the end. Her tray was untouched. No one joined her. Tyler, across the room, saw her for a moment. He paused mid-bite, eyes drifting from the chaos to her stillness. He didn't move. Then someone shouted a joke about crash landings, and the noise swept him back into the current. She stayed until the trays were being cleared. She always waited for silence. When she returned to her locker, something new was taped to it. A broken plastic rotor blade snapped at the shaft was stuck across the door with a bright orange maintenance tag. The note said, in messy all caps, "Might help next time." Below it, a small smiley face drawn in Sharpie. Jenna peeled the strip off without changing expression. She folded the tag once, placed it neatly into her side pouch, and opened Callie's notebook. 1 red mark went beside the last sim timestamp. 2 underlines. She didn't write a comment. There was no need. Tyler passed her in the hallway 20 minutes later. He nodded but said nothing. Her fingers were stained faintly with grease from where she'd checked a printout in the engine bay. She didn't return the nod. The locker room emptied slowly, but no one touched her gear again. That night, she walked alone to the far edge of the airfield, where the dark made the desert look like ocean. She stood by the fence and listened to the wind hiss through the cables. Back in the logbook, under all the fuel stats and vector lines, a new phrase appeared in blue ink. Pattern ignorance paired with noise. It was her only note of the day. By the end of her 3rd week on base, Jenna had corrected more problems than most trainees noticed existed. She recalculated fuel balances manually when the digital logs failed to sync. She flagged a cracked rotor spindle during pre-flight that 2 mechanics had already signed off on. She corrected wind drift estimates on an old sim map with nothing but a pencil and 3 data points from a telemetry feed. Not once did her name appear in the flight debriefs. Not once did anyone mention who prevented the error. One morning during a software patch cycle, the sim pod froze mid-drill. The countdown timer went dark. Devon rolled his eyes and muttered something about government tech. Jenna walked over without asking. She tapped through the system console, backtracked the firmware glitch, and input a correction. 90 seconds later, the mission clock reappeared. "Guess it just needed a reboot," Devon said, loud enough for the room. Everyone nodded and went on. Tyler didn't. He had been standing behind Jenna when she keyed in the override. He'd watched her fingers pause just before the final line, as if she was double-checking the fix from memory. He followed her outside, waiting until the hallway cleared. "How did you know the code path?" he asked. Jenna glanced at him, then at her gloves, which she hadn't taken off. "It's not my first cockpit," she said. Then she kept walking. That night. Tyler found her again, this time in the maintenance bay. Past midnight. The red task lamps cast soft glows across open crates and coiled cable. The turbine hum from a nearby engine test rig filled the silence with pressure. Jenna sat cross-legged on a drop cloth. An old analog flight map unrolled across her knees. She was marking pressure gradients in faded pencil, then comparing them to a telemetry stack on an open laptop. Her helmet sat beside her boots, its visor taped where the shield had cracked. She didn't speak when she noticed him there. She just reached for another printout and began comparing storm pattern notes. Her gloves, the same she wore during sim updates, were worn smooth at the seams. Tyler watched for almost 5 minutes. Then he left. The next morning, her helmet had a new addition. A plastic label, laminated like a name badge, was taped across the top ridge. In bold print, "Observer." The tape was the kind used for tool tags in the maintenance shop. Someone had taken the time to make it official. She didn't peel it off. She carried the helmet to the hangar briefing like normal, held under her arm, the tag facing forward. No one said anything to her directly, but more than a few looked twice. Tyler sat across from her that morning during systems review. He didn't ask about the label, but when the instructor asked for notes on the previous day's sim timing, he waited a beat to see if Jenna would speak. She didn't. Later, he walked past her in the hall and muttered, "Thanks for the nav fix." She only nodded. In her bunk that night, she opened Callie's logbook. Inside were 2 new entries. One marked the sim freeze. The other marked the rotor spindle she'd flagged. Both were filed under corrections not logged. She had developed a color code, now red for ignored warnings, blue for quiet corrections. A few black notations, short and sharp, marked systemic patterns. In the far corner of her bunk drawer, she kept the tag from her locker, the broken rotor blade and bright orange tape. She hadn't thrown it out. That same night, Tyler checked the system feed and noticed that a few of Jenna's route revisions had been uploaded into the sim database, quietly, uncredited. He made a copy. Back in the maintenance bay, Jenna folded the storm printouts into neat quarters and tucked them under the flap of the logbook. She flipped to the last page and underlined one phrase. "Sometimes the plan doesn't fail. The people do." She didn't sign it. The instructors reviewed the data in silence the next day. They saw the fixes. They didn't trace the source. But the SimPod ran smoother. And Tyler began asking better questions. They called it the fire line run. 2 helicopters. Simulated canyon smoke, limited GPS, unpredictable gusts, and an overloaded extraction payload from a flooded fire line. It was meant to mimic the worst-case scenario: poor visibility, misread terrain, and no margin for error. Jenna was there early. She sat on the edge of a folding bench in the logistics tent, notebook open, goggles resting around her neck. She'd mapped a new extraction arc using analog methods, hand-plotted altitude lines, surface temperature variances, and historic wind funnel patterns. The terrain shielding she identified cut down exposure time by 40 seconds. She ran the model 3 times. It held. She approached Devon in the briefing bay, where he was leaning back on a cracked folding chair, thumbing through a weather update and joking about smoke rig heat levels. "You're not even flying," he said, grinning. "But hey, if we crash, maybe your forecast gets a gold star." She held out the clipboard with the route suggestion. "Shelter slope here," she said. "South bend after the drop. It protects tailspin drift. Tested it 3 ways. Devon tapped the top of her clipboard with 2 fingers, like a pat. "Good thing no one listens to the weather girl," he said. Then he handed it off to a tech who placed it still unread beneath a bottle of electrolyte mix. Jenna said nothing. They assigned her to the van outpost radio relay, comms shadow. No decision authority. Her name wasn't even on the sim manifest. Tyler caught her eye once across the hangar, but didn't speak. Not yet. The canyon zone lit up by early dusk. Flood lamps turned amber. Smoke generators began to pulse along the mock ridgeline. Painted cutouts shaped the canyons, and sandbags formed the base outcroppings. It was cinematic, meant to disorient and impress. From the rear van, Jenna watched through 3 staggered camera feeds. Her headset was on. Channel 2 was live, but her mic toggle stayed dark. She kept her thumb near the switch, not on it. Devon's lead bird banked hard on the second turn. The sim's wind variable increased. They weren't ready. He pushed east of the planned path, clipping the exposed ridge. On screen, the tail stuttered. Crosswind caught him. The fuselage twisted. Alarms pinged across the control feed. One of the crew in the sim pod called out a thermal sensor warning. Devon overcorrected. The co-pilot hit emergency disengage. Downward tilt. Hard bounce. The secondary bird flared up too early. Aborting pickup. Both helos went dark. A long red message appeared across the command feed. Simulation failed. Crew lost. Inside the van, no one spoke. The tech director looked at Jenna. She hadn't moved. The clipboard still sat under the water bottle. She wrote something into her logbook. Red ink. 2 lines. 1 word avoidable. Outside, the heat rigs powered down with a hiss. Smoke drifted across the simulated canyon like real ash. When the crews returned, Devon waved his helmet in mock surrender. He told the instructors they'd been given faulty wind data. No one laughed this time. He said, "Tough breaks happen." The instructors glanced at Jenna, then turned away. No one asked if she had anything to add. Tyler didn't join the crowd. He lingered near the back, watching Jenna pack up her tablet and fold the old route map without a sound. His expression didn't hold surprise. It held something else. Something heavier. She stood near the helipad while the others debriefed. Wind kicked up sand against her boots. The corner of her flight suit flapped once, then fell still. Her helmet sat beside her pack, the fake observer tag still clinging to it. She didn't try to clean it off. The final moment of the evening came quietly. One instructor, clipboard tucked underarm, passed Jenna on the outer walkway. He didn't speak, but he slowed. She made no move to intercept him. No complaint, no gesture. Just the quiet sound of her zipper closing as she slipped the logbook back into her pouch. The page she'd written that morning an hour before the sim had already predicted the failure point. No one read it, but it was there. And now it was permanent. Tyler watched her disappear past the edge of the generator lights. His hands were still in his pockets, his mouth set. He turned back toward the bay. No one saw him follow. The alarm hit just after dawn. 1 shrill siren, then the coded sequence sharp bursts, slicing through the hangar walls. Within seconds, the overhead radios crackled to life. The voice was clipped, urgent. A flash flood had broken upstream near Southridge Canyon. A unit of wildfire responders was trapped on high ground. Roads were gone. A ridgeline washed out. Last visual showed the team holding above a surge line, signaling with a makeshift strobe. Inside the base tower, instructors scrambled. Maps slapped onto tabletops. Wind readouts and weather telemetry scrolled across 3 screens at once. The radio officer raised a trembling hand. "Zone cutoff. Now we need vertical evac. GPS degraded. Winds climbing." In the hangar, 3 helicopters were out for maintenance. 2 more were grounded, tied up in refueling protocols. That left 1. A single UH-60 Blackhawk. Older model. No digital guidance. Analog-only controls. No pilot on rotation. A long silence held in the airlock between tower and tarmac. No one moved. Devon stood behind the flight roster, arms crossed. He glanced toward the dusty Blackhawk at the edge of the bay. "Unless ground support wants to fly it," he said, grinning. From the back of the logistics bay, Jenna stepped into view. She didn't look at Devon. She didn't answer the instructors. She walked across the tarmac with her gloves already on. Her helmet clipped to her side. No checklist in hand. No permission asked. She passed the others without a word and climbed into the cockpit. The moment her boots hit the skid, the tower froze. Inside the cockpit, Jenna moved with deliberate calm. Her left hand adjusted the analog fuel dial. Her right thumb hovered over the starter coil. Her eyes scanned the instrument panel without blinking. Every motion was quiet, fluid, intentional. In the tower, the mic popped. Then her voice came through. Tower, Black Hawk 4, solo. Ridge coordinates locked. Wind east-northeast. Speed 20. Standing by for visual clearance. No one answered at first. Then, one controller cleared his throat. Copy, Black Hawk 4. You are go. The rotors spun up. The wind kicked low dust across the pad. Crew members shielded their eyes as the old bird lifted from the line like it had always been meant to fly. From the tower feed, they watched her curve out and vanish over the southern rise. Inside the helicopter, Jenna tracked elevation manually. She dialed in air pressure readings without the aid of overlays. She read the canyon curve by the slope of tree shadows and the whip of branches. Her breath was steady. Her gloves creaked faintly against the cyclic. Down below, the canyon roared. The river had swollen into a current of mud and broken limbs. Fire crews were visible only by motion arms waving. One flare of mirror light, a marker cloth tied to a branch. Jenna didn't hesitate. She banked wide, circled once, dropped low over the ridge, and pulled into a hover. Her voice came clear across comms. Visual on unit. Anchoring drop at South Rock Edge. Prepare for hover extraction. I'll make 2 passes. The tower listened without a word. On the first pass, 4 were lifted. The 5th slipped, regained footing, then signaled with both hands. Jenna circled again, dropped faster this time. The skids barely cleared the rock shelf. The crew lunged for the rails. She held steady. Back in the tower, a pin dropped. No one dared to breathe. Jenna never looked back. Her eyes stayed on the ridge markers. Her voice never wavered. Final unit aboard, returning direct path, skimming low. The return flight cut close to canyon walls. One gust struck the tail she adjusted without flinch. The rotors buzzed against air pressure, then found rhythm again. Below, the current churned. At base, the hangar doors opened. Every boot stood still. The Black Hawk emerged from the haze like a ghost coming home. Its blades soaked, its undercarriage smeared with floodwater. She landed without excess motion. A clean touch. A full stop. The engines cut. The rotors slowed. No one clapped. No one cheered. They simply watched. Jenna removed her helmet. Her hair stuck damp at the collar. She stepped down, boots squelching against wet tarmac. She walked across the flight line with her logbook tucked under one arm. Not a word passed her lips. Not one question stopped her path. The tower controller updated the board. Pilot of record J. Miles. Operation Ridge Extraction. Result all units recovered. Aircraft Black Hawk 4. Devon stood at the edge of the bay, mouth slightly open. Tyler watched from the far end, hands in his pockets. His eyes didn't leave her once. The mission was done. The flood had passed. But the silence it left behind carried something heavier. Not awe, not victory, recognition. By morning, the base was gathered on the flight line. The sun had barely cleared the ridge, but the air already shimmered off the concrete. Recruits lined up in silent formation. Pilots, crew leads, and instructors stood shoulder to shoulder. Everyone assumed it was a debrief. The flood mission had shaken the command tower, but no one expected more than a congratulations or protocol review. Then the convoy arrived. 2 matte black vehicles rolled up beside the hangar. A third carried a sealed case and radio staff. Men in dark gray uniforms stepped out first. Then a woman in a pale tactical vest took center position. She held a file in one hand and a tablet in the other. No one spoke. The statement came without delay. Her voice was firm and cold. Yesterday's emergency response was not a training event. 22 lives were at risk in Southridge Canyon. 1 aircraft lifted. 1 operator flew. The pilot on record is Jenna Miles. Heads turned, eyes widened. The name echoed like a static burst. Jenna stepped forward from the edge of the formation. She wore a fresh flight suit, no dust, no scuffs, but nothing showy. On her chest, A task force patch caught the sun for just a second. She held nothing in her hands. No helmet. No clipboard. She didn't nod to anyone. The crowd went still. No clapping. Just silence. Devon blinked. His face drained of color. One instructor shifted his weight like he was bracing for something physical. Several of the younger recruits lowered their eyes. Tyler didn't. He stood straighter. The agent opened a sealed folder. The paper inside was thick, dog-eared at one edge. These are operational notes filed by Jenna Miles over the last 8 days. They include corrected flight paths, early failure flags, fuel miscalculations, and risk assessments. Every entry is time-stamped before each failed simulation. None of them were reviewed. All were accurate. There was a pause. This base will undergo review, effective immediately. 5 members of the command track are dismissed. 3 trainees will be placed on probation for conduct violation and falsified debrief data. On the ground, 2 pilots stepped forward when called. They removed their badges and handed them over. The only sound was the rustle of papers and the slight creak of boot soles on wet concrete. No one looked at Jenna. In a bin near the hangar, the helmet she had worn during early assignments still sat under a pile of discarded gear. The plastic observer tag was still stuck to it, flapping faintly in the morning wind. Tower staff behind the formation whispered. That was her voice. Someone said. The agent stepped aside. All eyes turned toward Jenna. She looked at no one in particular. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it carried. Pilots don't rise by volume. They rise by lift. Then she turned. She did not wait for approval. She did not pause for recognition. Behind her, the patch on her back caught a sliver of light. The seal read, National Task Force, Aviation Crisis Response. Tyler exhaled once. His shoulders relaxed. Devon didn't move. The instructor stood frozen, but a few nodded. The line closed behind her. No fanfare. No exit march. Just one figure walking alone back toward the hangar, her boots silent over sun-washed pavement. The file was still open on the table. Her notes stretched across pages no one had read, but now they were real. Every warning, every line, every fix. Jenna never raised her voice. She had never needed to, and now no one would forget it. The floodwaters had long since receded, but something quieter had shifted across the base. Conversations were shorter. Pre-checks doubled. Flight crews moved with more care. The sound of boots still echoed across the tarmac each morning, but the laughter was gone. What replaced it wasn't fear. It was focus. Jenna wasn't seen often, but her presence lingered everywhere. Her routes were referenced in mission planning. Her telemetry charts were taped beside the flight brief displays. Even the flight simulator timing logs had been reset aligned with her corrections. Not the defaults. Tyler noticed it first. The same analog system she had warned about was now run through twice before every drill. Her name didn't appear on the whiteboard roster, but her call sign was handwritten on a sticky note at the top of the operations monitor. Nobody had touched it. One evening, just before final light, Tyler found her. She was seated at the edge of a secondary hangar where broken gear was stored. A small desk lamp cast a warm circle over a metal tray. Jenna was reading from an old maintenance log, flipping pages like she was charting wind by memory. Her gloves were folded beside her, fingers smoothed flat from wear. He stepped forward and held out a flight path map, his most recent sim run. He didn't say anything. She scanned it, traced one gloved fingertip along the fuel vector, then tapped once. The adjustment was subtle, but vital. Now it's clean, she said. He nodded, tucked the map away, left without asking more. The next day, her locker stood open. No gear, no boots, no nameplate, just a sealed bag on the bench below it, and a small leather-bound notebook left in plain view. Inside were pages of notes, some annotated in red, others in fading pencil, cross-referenced maps, diagrammed failures, a photo of the canyon ridge, printed on grainy paper, clipped to the back page, and one final line written in clean, steady ink. Quiet skies are earned. The notebook was placed in the training vault that afternoon. No speech, no announcement, just a silent agreement. By evening, Tyler's name had been updated on the lead cadet listing. There were no murmurs of favoritism, just nods. No one questioned it. Jenna didn't leave through the main gate. Late in the day, after the flight line had cleared, she crossed the tarmac with her bag slung low, walking straight past the open doors of the operations hangar. Several instructors stood as she passed. They didn't speak. They didn't salute. They just stood. Her boots made no sound on the flight deck, only the soft scuff of cloth shifting over metal. She paused once by the Black Hawk. Its cockpit glass was clean now, streaked faintly from recent weather. Her reflection hovered in it for a second. It looked like it belonged there. Then it faded, and she kept walking. No one followed. No one called out. But, from that day forward, every flight review began with a question someone had written on the wall outside the locker bay. What did Jenna already know? This is a story of someone who never asked to be seen, yet changed everything she touched. Jenna walked among them unnoticed, handed checklists instead of controls, her insight overlooked and her silence mistaken for inexperience. But through every dismissal she observed, she recorded. She waited. When the crisis came, it was her skill, not her voice, that led them home. And when the dust cleared, what she left behind was more than a rescue. It was a standard, a quiet one. This is a story about legacy without applause, and how real leadership speaks clearest when it says the least. If this story moved you, feel free to share your thoughts or follow for more quiet, powerful stories. Sometimes, the notebook they ignore becomes the one that trains the next generation.